goodness, y'all. Thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode of the Evening Podcast. This is Alicia, and I am beyond excited because I have my cousin, Noelle Nathan, here on the podcast. And it's crazy because when I think I was like, was I 12? Maybe I was younger than that. I don't know. But she was my first babysitting job.
Yeah.
I felt so official. I was like, "Oh, I'm actually working."
Yeah.
And now she is a grown woman and living her best life, and so I'm really excited to have her on the podcast because she has an amazing story and just a testimony that's beyond compare. So, thank you, Noelle, for being here on the podcast.
Yes. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited. I think I learned that story maybe about 10 years ago of you being my first babysitter. So full circle moment.
Right, and it's so funny because when your mom asked me to be the babysitter, my grandmother, you remember my grandma?
Yes. Yes.
So she was like, "You're gonna come over here and watch the baby because I need to basically, like, she needed to make sure that I knew what I was
Yeah.
doing."
Sounds about right. But you obviously did a great job because here I am today, right?
And if you know my grandmother, if you knew my grandmother, you completely understand. So,
Yeah.
yes. Oh my gosh. So, I wanna just start out first, even just beyond just being family and everything, we have in our family a few folks who suffer from autoimmune, like, diseases. Myself, I have multiple
Mhm.
sclerosis, and Noelle also, has lupus.
Mhm.
And then I'm trying to think other people in our family that have other autoimmune concerns. I know your dad as well, right?
Mhm. Yes. Mhm.
Right. And I don't are we the only 3 people with autoimmune?
I think there's a few other with rheumatoid arthritis
Yes, okay.
and diabetes, of course, but
Right,
mhm.
right. And, I bring it up because it's like autoimmune diseases are so tricky because at one minute you are, like, just living your life, and then out of nowhere, like, everything has just shut down. And so for you, I guess, starting out with all of this, when did you discover that you had lupus, and, what were some of the signs and symptoms that presented when, you were first, discovering all this?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was around 19 or 20 when I first started experiencing symptoms. And I remember I was in college and it was around finals time, and
Mhm.
I had just felt super, super weak, really, really fatigued. And then it kind of turned into what seemed to be something that was like respiratory. So I
Mm.
went to the doctor. The doctor was just for sure like, oh, you have asthma. So I remember him prescribing me an inhaler. And at the time, I was really confused. I had never had seasonal allergies. I had never
Right,
had anything wrong, with my respiratory, no respiratory issues. So he puts me on this inhaler, and I am progressively getting worse over time.
right,
I'm contacting him again and saying, hey, something's not right. At this point, I'm having a lot of congestion. I'm having a lot of chest pain, and it's things are just not improving. Now, I love the fact that you mentioned that even though multiple people in our family have autoimmune disorders, it wasn't ever registering to me that like,
right,
okay, you have these like really severe symptoms that at like 19, 20 years old are not really common. Maybe it's that. That didn't even cross my mind.
right.
So unfortunately, it took about 6 to 8 months before somebody put it together and was like, hey, since your
Mm.
dad has this autoimmune disorder, maybe you should go and see a specialist. I do. They run the full panel, and then I test positive for systemic lupus.
Wow.
And I had the markers for it. So it took me being on an inhaler for like 4 months, doing all of these things with a pulmonologist.
Right.
They were just ineffective. And then they finally gave me the official diagnosis. Yeah.
Wow, see, and that I did not know. I didn't know that you had to deal with all of that and then to officially get to the full-blown diagnosis.
Yeah.
And it's crazy because with a lot of folks with, autoimmune, diseases, it does take a a decent amount of time for you to figure out exactly what's going on.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
right? And so during that time, were you still able to, like, get through school? Like, or how were you managing with all that?
That's a great question. It got to a really severe point because, like I said, it was around finals. I was
Mhm.
able to do my final, and I felt like the worst I had ever felt in my life. Such a
Right.
blessing able to finish. Luckily, because I finished my finals, I then kind of had that month in December to kind of rest and recover around the holidays.
Right.
And I just had to go right back into next semester because I had not been officially diagnosed by that time,
Mhm.
and it was horrible.
Right.
Especially being the I guess the one thing that was helpful is that because they still thought it was something pulmonary, they did prescribe steroids, and that
Mm.
is a common treatment in lupus when you are having a flare.
Right.
So it did help with the symptoms. It did not take them away, but it did improve them enough for me to finish out the semester. But yeah,
Right.
that was really challenging, especially to be in my, first semester of college. So, or my first year of college. Yeah.
Yeah. No, because and the reason why I asked too, because when I was diagnosed, well, before I was actually given my official diagnosis of multiple sclerosis, it's like this is kind of mirrored. I had my symptoms that started in December, so I was in nursing school.
Yes.
Started
Hmm.
right at the end of that semester. Got the ability to kind of chill during December, but still didn't know what was happening with me.
Yeah.
And then full speed ahead, had to get back into
Yeah.
the semester. It was like,
Exactly. Yeah.
and when I was in school, when I actually got back, for that spring semester, some of my professors were saying to me, maybe you should sit out this year or the rest of the
Mm.
year, and then reconsider, starting up next year. Did you experience anything like that, or were you like in a space where you didn't have to worry about all that?
No, I feel that now looking back on it, and I think even a couple of years after realizing the stuff
Hmm.
that you have to put yourself through just to be able to get to that next point,
Right,
understanding that for a lot of people, when they have an official diagnosis and they know what's happening, they are hospitalized or they do take time off work. They take
right,
FMLA, they do whatever they need to do to recover. But for me and you to be in school,
right,
you kind of have this on your mind of like, "Oh, if I don't finish, I'm going to have to repeat this semester. I'm spending money to get this degree.
right.
I want to finish on time." It's like you have all of this pressure, and I don't know if you've experienced this, but I feel like for me, it was almost like I don't know, I had to put that at the back of my mind just to be
Yep,
able to finish, but every single day, I feel horrible physically, you
yeah,
know? And so trying to disconnect what I'm feeling physically to be able to finish mentally.
right.
So yeah, it was just a lot of pushing through. I did not have the grace of my professors or my instructors to really notice what was going on, to have the conversation with me. I kind
Right.
of just figured it out. But luckily, like I said, within 6, 8 months, I had the diagnosis and was able to get the treatment I needed. So,
That's awesome. No, that's
yeah,
awesome. No,
yeah.
and like I said, I had brought that up because, like I said, when I was told that, like, okay, I would possibly not be able to continue working or, pursuing
Mhm.
school, like you said, it's this thing like, I've gotta finish, like, I've gotta get this done, and
Yeah.
also, I think for me, I felt like if I stop, will things get worse for me? Like, will
Yes.
all this actually, be a snowball effect, and then I'll see more of what I experienced initially? It's like, so I've gotta find a way to kinda, like, not think about it, mask it, you
Yes.
know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah. So, yeah, so I'm glad that you had the ability to just kinda, like, move through it and not actually have to, like, really have someone questioning your ability to actually finish out that year,
Yeah. Yeah.
seriously.
Yeah. I feel like it was just the lack of awareness of what was going on. I think
Mhm,
I've had some really great professors and instructors over time that when similar things happen, because I've
mhm,
had multiple flares,
right,
even during my master's program where I had that connection with them where they could recognize and say like, "Hey, how can we support you?"
right,
And luckily every time I already could identify what was going on at that point, so I was able to just but as you mentioned, the part of autoimmune disorders that a lot of people don't talk about is that mental connection to it, right?
yes,
Like
yes,
before diagnosis, it's all of this confusion about, wow, my body really doesn't feel the way that it's supposed to, but I'm not sure what's going on, but I have to
right,
push forward anyway.
right,
But even when the diagnosis comes, one, accepting that you have the diagnosis,
right,
learning that from each time you have a flare, your symptoms may look different. And then just, like, the mental exhaustion of, like, here we go again,"
Right,
going
exactly.
with these symptoms. So,
Right.
yeah, there's a big, connection between the 2 for sure.
And I'm glad you brought up the mental health piece about this because we had talked about we were gonna you kind of like, you know, dive into this actual conversation. For those who have chronic illnesses, particularly like an autoimmune disease, where, like what we were saying, like at one minute you're fine, the next minute your body's just like literally like, okay, I can't move this side of my arm or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
Um, have you like gone through therapy or anything to like help you through all this process, or have you just kind of like white knuckled it and it's like I'm just gonna figure this out the best way I can, you know?
Yeah. Ironically, I in my own practice, I have treated multiple people with chronic illness,
Mm,
and because I've had that experience, that has been something for them of like, "Oh, she gets it."
yeah.
And not that they necessarily have lupus, sometimes it is MS, sometimes there's other, disorders that people are going through or just other medical issues where they've been severely ill for a long time.
Uh-huh.
But I never sought it out for myself
Right.
until I was diagnosed with my most recent diagnosis of cardiomyopathy.
Right.
And I think in that diagnosis, it was so life changing.
Mm,
It was life changing for me, for my family. It had an impact on how I was able to show up in my profession. That I was like, you really need to see somebody about this specifically.
right.
And I always say that, like, even therapists have therapists. Mental health is beneficial for
Right.
everybody. Therapy is beneficial for everybody.
Right.
And so have I obviously seen a therapist before? Yes. But
Right.
about my illnesses? No.
Mm,
And being on the other side of that now, of just being able to process through what that means, how that feels, how sometimes it does change your life, or you have had these moments where maybe you've almost lost your life and you were different because of that. And now
right.
all these other people around you have to adapt to this person who
Right.
has been through these things. So, yes, in the past year and a half, I have been going to therapy for those things specifically, but for a long time I didn't.
Right.
And the only way that I really acknowledged those things was in the work I was doing with my own clients. So, yeah.
Thank you for sharing that because
Yeah.
sometimes it can be really like hard to kind of like even like open up about that because
Yeah.
at least for me, I'll say for me, I don't want to speak for anybody else, but like having multiple sclerosis for me has been one of the most vulnerable things
Mhm.
I've ever had to experience. And
Yeah.
you know how our family is. We're very strong people. We're going to
Yeah.
put the face on. We got it. Like there's nothing that's going to stop us. Whatever.
Yes, exactly.
So,
Yeah.
and
Yes.
to have like I don't want to say a barrier, but something like this to kind of like basically stop you in your tracks, it is so overwhelming considering we're the type of people we're gonna plow through. We're gonna figure this out. Nothing's gonna stop me. And it's like sometimes I didn't realize, and you can let me know how you feel about this. I feel like in some ways I don't want to say I needed multiple sclerosis, but I needed something to kind of like soften me, and then also for
Yeah.
me to see a different perspective of how I was navigating life. Does that make sense?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
love the fact that you said vulnerable because you think about vulnerability when you're trying to build connections and relationships and things like that, and how important it is to allow other people to see you and know you for who you are. And that's
Right.
always important. But doing that with chronic illness is a different type of beast because
Yes.
you are one admitting to that and then really having to sit with the fact of like, hey, I may not be able to do everything that I want to do. And what
Right.
does that mean?
Mm.
You made a perfect point that we come from a family with very strong and very
Yes.
resilient people, especially women.
Yes.
And I think about my grandmother, Dot, like, love
Yes.
her. She's one of my best friends on this earth. I mean, I still talk to her almost every day. I love my grandmother. And
Right.
one of the things that I learned from her was fighting through all of these things no matter what came her way.
Right.
And it wasn't until I was older that I was like, wow, she has been living with a lot of chronic pain, with
Right.
her own autoimmune issues, with
Right.
all of these things, and I would have never noticed because she never complained.
Right.
And so it really wasn't so I do a lot of work I have done a lot of work with the Lupus Foundation.
Mm.
And it wasn't until I was in those spaces with other people with lupus that were like, "No, I take a break when I need to take a break,"
Right.
or "I do these things to get through life," or, "I don't work full time," or "I
Mm.
rely heavily on the support system to be able to manage my illness." And I was like, wow, so I can take care of myself and that's okay. I don't
Right.
have to be strong all the time. It's
Right.
okay to acknowledge this. But sometimes until you're in those spaces, it feels like you can't give yourself permission to do that, you
Right.
know? So, yeah, that's a good point. Very true.
Thank you for bringing up the fact that you have, like, inserted yourself in these spaces, with, like, lupus communities and things of that nature, and the reason why I say that is even to this day, like, I'm slowly, um, inserting myself in, like, multiple sclerosis spaces,
Yeah.
and the reason why I have kind of, like, been hesitant to do this is because when I've joined different Facebook groups that are centered around multiple sclerosis, a lot of it was folks just complaining, and, oh, everything was gloom and doom,
Yeah.
and it was just kinda like, "Okay, guys, okay, we're all low-key struggling." I mean, yes, we can talk about the
Yes.
times, like, we can
Yeah.
talk about the times where things are hard, but it's like every conversation, like, where's the empowerment in this? And
Yeah.
so it's been like, I've just started doing the MS walks and things like that. I wanna get more involved in things, but that's where I've struggled because I'm like, I don't want something to bring me down. In terms of my energy, my, like, just my aura, if that makes sense. And so for you, were you just like full speed ahead, like, let me just join, groups that are similar, or did you have hesitancy as well at some point?
I did. I did for sure. And it did take me a while. Like, it
Right.
wasn't like within the first couple years I joined. It did take a while, and I'll tell you why. I ended up being diagnosed with lupus nephritis, and I was in kidney failure.
Right.
Again, early 20s.
Right.
And there was no one I knew that had ever been through that.
Right.
Again, I have other relatives that have had lupus on my dad's side and also on my mom's side.
Right.
But no one had ever went through that I could talk to about it. And so I was just like, okay, I really need to understand better how to manage this long term.
Right.
Luckily, I that took a long time. I actually had to go to a specialty hospital out of state. They were able to try like an innovative treatment, and along with prayer, and a huge diet change. And I'm sure we'll
Right.
talk about that. But
Yes.
a huge lifestyle change. I was able to recover. I've had no issues with my kidneys since.
It's amazing.
But during that time, I was like, I really need to figure out who I can talk to about this because I have no idea. But kind of like you said, there were some spaces within that were really great, very
Right.
supportive, very empowering, very light. And then I remember I had joined a support group at one point, and I'm
Uh-huh.
like, great, we're just going to be sharing our experiences. And my time with that was so limited, and I hated it, but only because every single meeting was about the doom and gloom and the symptoms and how horrible it is and
Right.
how, terrible it is that we're not going to be able to live our life in the way that we want to.
Right.
And it was so triggering that I can no longer
Yes.
attend. So I understand when you say, it's hard. You want that support and to be around other people that understand, but for your mental health and your emotional well-being, sometimes being in those spaces and everybody's just sharing their story and
Right.
sometimes that's the only outlet and you do understand that. But it can be really, really heavy on you. And when you're going through a flare, it's like it almost is preventing you from being able to work through that in the way you want to because it's like,
Right.
"Oh, no. Am I gonna get through this? And look at them, and they never did?" So you really have to be careful about protecting your mental health in those spaces too.
Yeah.
And I always tell people if it's not beneficial, it's okay. Find another
Right.
group that is, and that's okay too.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
thank you for that, 'cause like I said, it took me a minute to kind of like, "Okay, Alicia, try another space," right?
Mm,
Because I'm that kind of person, I'm kinda, like, fixed. Like, once I experience I'll give it, like, maybe 2 tries, and after that, I'm like,
yeah.
okay, guys, like, no, I did it, but it's
Yes.
like, no, I think it's like also with therapists too, like, sometimes you have to keep shopping around, right? It's like,
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
can't just maybe 1 or 2 people, like, you have to kinda, like, see where your, people are, if that
Yeah.
makes,
Yeah,
so
it
yeah.
does,
Yeah.
yeah. I tell people all the time it has to be a good fit. I tell my own clients, and everybody can attest to this, I always like to offer a consultation first, even if
Right.
they're ready to just book, and that happens a lot. And I tell people, I know what I bring to the table, but this is about you. I want
Right.
you to have this experience. So if you don't feel like I'm a right fit, tell me. I'm going to
Right.
help you find the therapist that's best for you. That is so
Right.
important to have people that you can connect with and that you feel comfortable with. Yeah.
No, I love that. You
Yeah.
mentioned, and I'm gonna get back to the myocarditis information as well, because like there's so many things I'm like, I want to touch, here
Yeah.
and there, yeah. But
Yeah.
you mentioned that you had a major like life change in terms of your diet and stuff like that once
Yes.
you found out your actual diagnosis. And so
Mhm.
for those who are probably like, well, what did you do? Like what are you doing in terms of diet and even maybe exercise? So what are you doing now? Is it like plant-based? What is it?
Yeah, so I have went through different stages, different things that I've done within my diet. Initially, when I was diagnosed with the lupus nephritis, I think that was a drastic change, like cold turkey.
Right.
Once I received the diagnosis and my nephrologist had kind of given me some recommendations, and again, kind of coming from a family where our diet already excluded a lot of things.
Yes.
It wasn't very difficult for, like, some aspects, right, of the things
Right.
that they were suggesting. But there were other things that I just kind of knew over time, like, "No, this is inflammatory." Like, dairy can be inflammatory, right?
Right.
Sugar
Right.
can be inflammatory. So, initially, I just went straight vegetarian. I did still incorporate the dairy,
Right.
but I was, like, a pop fanatic. Like, I would drink pop every single day. That was something I cut out fully, definitely wanted to watch my sugar, um, but in red meat, like, that was the
Yeah.
recommendation, like, obviously cut out red meat. So I was just like, "I'm just gonna go all in. I'm gonna become
Right.
vegetarian." At that time, I did try vegan shortly after that. I just felt like I was out of it all the time, and
Right.
I know now it was just I wasn't replacing the nutrients in the way that I needed to with,
Right.
still getting protein.
Right.
And so I went through pescatarian, vegetarian, vegan, all of these things up until this point. Now I am still pescatarian, but I
Uh-huh.
really do try to limit my dairy. Um, Prior to cardiomyopathy, that worked really well for me. Like I could limit my dairy, I could, do the pescatarian diet, and I felt like my best self.
Mm,
But ever since that diagnosis, because there were other things that stemmed from it,
mm.
dairy really triggers me in a way that
Wow.
before. And so now I'm like, no, girl, you need to be vegan. Like you
Right.
need to do that.
Right.
Um, and I don't do a lot of processed food. I don't do dyes. I don't do preservative or artificial preservatives. I don't do any of those things.
Right.
Um, but some of the things are a struggle, so I'm
Yes.
still trying to find replacements, but I've done a little bit of everything over time. One thing I can say, and I'm sure we'll talk about this. So subsequent to lupus, but before the cardiomyopathy, I was also diagnosed with like a rare neurological disorder.
Mm.
And it came about 6 weeks after I experienced COVID.
Uh-huh.
And I was one of those people who went years without getting COVID. I
Right.
really protected myself. I had just had a baby right before COVID. We did all the precautions since I was immunocompromised and we had the kids and all those things.
Right.
And then someone in my household ended up getting it. I caught it from them.
Right.
And 6 weeks later, I have these horrible, like just life changing symptoms. I have
Mm.
no idea what's going on. I go to several doctors, even my rheumatologist. Nobody can figure it out.
Right.
I go to the hospital, I'm admitted, they discharge me. It was just this long cycle. What happened, it got so severe that I lost all of my motor function, could
Oh,
not touch
wow.
my ear to my nose, couldn't keep anything, not even water down. I'm losing all of this weight. And I go to a research hospital, and after about a week in the hospital doing all this testing, they diagnosed me with this very rare neurological disorder that almost mimics MS.
Mm.
And, they were saying that a lot of people are actually misdiagnosed with MS because there is a certain antibody that you have to test for, and if it's positive and you have all these symptoms, that gives them the idea that, hey, this is what you have.
Right.
The unfortunate part about it is that it isn't something that has been an official diagnosis for a long time. And so the prognosis of it isn't very bright. And there's not as many medications to treat it as some of the other neurological disorders.
Right.
And so that alone was something where I was their recommendation was doing all this immunotherapy, chemo. My body was rejecting everything. I
Right.
was not getting better. And in addition to just like prayer and the
Right.
prayer warriors and family praying over me, that
Right.
was one time where I drastically changed my diet.
Right.
Definitely vegan, but literally just plant-based, like whole foods, nothing else. And when
Right.
I tell you I could see the real power in what that did for my body,
Wow.
that nothing else was helping in that moment. And
Right.
I know that there were other factors at play. Obviously God intervened, and that's another part of my testimony, like, I
Right.
got me through that. But to literally see the inflammation in my body just decrease in the way that it did when I really started getting more sleep, drinking more water, and eating the things I was supposed to eat,
Right.
that really told me, like, "Okay, yes, there's
Right.
power, and you need to stick with it." So, yeah, it does have a really positive impact on your body when you can make those lifestyle changes. So, yeah.
Thank you for that. And as you were
Yeah.
saying that, I was just thinking of, like the saying that that folks say in church, faith without works is dead.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I mean, it's one thing we can do prayer and all this, but you still have to put in some type of work
Yeah.
around it.
Mhm.
Um, and we grew up Seventh Day Adventists. I'm just saying this to
Yes.
the folks here that are
Yeah.
listening.
Yeah.
And so a lot of what we grew up with in terms of diet, um, was kind of like already in our psyche because
Yeah.
with the Seventh-day Adventist faith, the health message is something that's really big. And so a lot of folks that are Adventists are either vegetarian, vegan, or if they do eat meat, they eat what's considered clean meat.
Yes.
So do you feel like I'm saying all that to say, do you feel like that was like a good foundation for you to actually get moving in terms of like making these changes?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think
Yeah.
it made a lot of things easier.
Right.
And it's interesting because I saying that, like, growing up, there's some things that you're like I remember this as a kid. There were just some things of like, "I really wanna try that," or "That school lunch looks so good, and I can't have
Right.
it because it's pork," or whatever. But
Yes.
I always honored that. Like, I
Right.
really didn't ever do it even though I wanted to.
Right.
But interesting enough, like, even when I grew up, I never had really the desire to still eat certain things, and
Right.
so I'm gonna be honest, when I had to give up the burgers, that was hard.
Right.
That was hard because it was
Right.
like popping a burger every other day,
Right.
but, like, to to walk away from some things just wasn't as difficult because, like you said, I think growing up, you have to have that discipline, right? Like,
Right.
you're already told you can't eat these things, and so no matter if it's right in front of your face or all your friends are doing it or whatever the case may be,
Right.
you've already been conditioned to like, "No, I can be okay without that." So
Right.
it definitely made it easier, not just like, you know, not always the easy thing to do depending on what it is, but it did help for sure. I agree, yeah.
The It's so funny as you were saying that, just thinking about, like, childhood. I remember and I was telling my wife, Chris, this the other day because, I mean,
Yeah.
she grew up Baptist, so they ate
Yeah,
everything.
same thing with my husband,
Right.
yes.
No shade or anything, but it's
Yeah,
just what it was, right?
right, yeah,
And so I was saying to her, I was like, I remember one time when I was a kid and we were somewhere, some kids, we were all talking about something and they had like bacon
yeah,
for lunch or something. It was on something, I don't know. And I was like, "Oh, I can't have that." My mom had already packed my lunch. 'Cause sometimes when she would have to look at the menu and see like certain things we couldn't eat, she would then pack us lunch.
yeah, mhm,
Very few and far between, but she would do it
right,
sometimes.
yeah,
But I remember the kids were like, "Oh, why did you bring lunch today? We're having whatever it was." I was like, "Well, I don't eat pork." And they're like, "You've never had bacon? You've never had sausage?" And I was like, "No,
yes,
I've never had it." And they're like, "Oh, you just don't know what you're missing." And I was like, "You're right. I
yeah,
mean, I don't know." I'm
yeah,
like,
yeah,
it was never something where it was just like, I must have it. It just,
right,
so that just, that memory just came up. I just thought it was so funny, you
yes,
know?
Yeah, and you don't even really feel bad about it until they bring it to your attention, and then you're
Right,
like, "Oh, am I really missing out?"
right. So
Yeah.
much so that has stuck with me. It stuck with me up until I came to New York, and I remember I was like, "You know what? I'm just gonna try some bacon."
Yeah. You're like, "It's over. I'm just gonna
I was
try
gonna
it."
try.
Yeah.
And I tell you, I ate it and I was like, "Ew." Like, it was just
Yeah.
so salty. I was like, "What is
Yes.
this?" I was like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I wasted taste, like, I wasted my money, like, what is
Right. All
this?" Like,
this is not even yeah.
it wasn't even the
Mhm.
thing. I was like, "Yo, Alicia, yeah." No shade to people who eat bacon, like, live your best life, like, but it just wasn't for me.
Exactly. Exactly. If you love it, that's great.
Go for
Yeah.
it. Like, go for it. No, no, this is so funny. So you've mentioned a few times that you had a recent diagnosis of I'm blanking on the word here. Myocardia say it for me.
Cardiomyopathy.
Thank you. I don't know
Mhm.
why I couldn't
Yeah.
get it. Cardiomyopathy. Hello, Alicia.
Yeah.
And if you couldn't just let folks know what brought on you even knowing that you had cardiomyopathy,
Yeah.
and then kind of like how it all came full circle for you at this point in your life. That makes
Yeah.
sense? Yeah.
Yeah, it does. So, um, what ended up happening is I had a whole treatment plan, when I got pregnant with my youngest child.
Uh-huh.
And in the pregnancy with her, I was very intentional. Like, I'm older now. I know the things that work for my body, what
Right.
doesn't. I had this whole mission that I'm gonna do this natural birth this time.
Yeah.
And so I had a very diligent plan with my OB to
Uh-huh.
carry that out. I did a lot of research in finding the right provider.
Mhm.
And just to give a little backstory, with my older two children, I was in an area where there wasn't a lot of diversity in healthcare, and so I
Right.
kind of just knew like what to expect with that. Like, okay, this is how it's going to be.
Right.
I accepted that. But in the area that I live in now, there are so many options. There's really great hospitals, or so I thought, and a lot of
Right.
OB care where you feel like, hey, if I want to do a natural birth, if I want to have a midwife, if I want to do a home birth, whatever I want to do, if I want to have a doula, there's
Right.
access to all these things. So it's very diligent about that. I experienced in the delivery with her a horrible, horrible birth trauma that I could have never predicted.
Right.
My provider that I had been seeing throughout my pregnancy for whatever day just wasn't there, even though they scheduled an induction against really what I wanted.
Right.
And everything from there just seemed like a nightmare. I'll just put it that
Mm.
way.
Right.
At the end of the day, you've experienced when you have a child, your mind is on what do I need to do to get through this and to be okay? But then you're
Right.
also thinking about your baby.
Right.
And so it turned into one of those situations where, like, prime example, a typical stay for me and my first two children was like 4 to 5 days.
Right.
Because of lupus, because I was having a C-section, they wanted to monitor me. I was released in less than 48 hours with my third baby.
What?
And yes, and I would say about 2 weeks in, at the hospital, there were things that I noticed that just didn't feel right,
Uh-huh.
and they kept reassuring me, "Oh, well, you're older now, you're considered advanced maternal age, and, oh, this is your 3rd baby, so these things are common," but I was like, I don't know, there's just some
Right.
things that don't feel right." I was in a lot of pain.
Right.
I remember waking up because they put me under for my 3rd one, and I couldn't speak. I actually could not speak. I could not talk. And my nurses who were great, shout out
Right.
to you guys. Shout out to nurses. You guys are
Right.
awesome. You make the difference in healthcare, really. Um, they're like concerned and they're trying to find my provider and they're like, hey, she's not speaking, like something's wrong. Didn't come and see me. So we get past all of
Wow.
that. And it's like a couple weeks in, and I'm just feeling like, okay, something's just off.
Right.
So I reach out to my provider and they're like, hey, you're not really at 6 weeks yet. You just recovered from the C section. We're sure it's okay. And then there was a time at about between 7 and 8 weeks, I was like, okay, I'm going to get some fresh air. We're going to walk outside. And we were walking with our older two children, my husband and I was pushing the baby. And he was like, you just don't seem okay. Like,
Right.
are you okay? And I was
Right.
just Yeah, I'm kinda winded. I know I've just had a baby, but, like, this doesn't feel right. So,
Right,
of course, the first thing that goes to my mind is lupus, even though I've
right,
never had a lupus flare after having either of my older 2 children, and usually within the first year of pregnancy and delivery. So I reached out to my provider. I told them what's going on. I still have to wait a period of time to see someone. I finally come in and they're like, "No, we think you're healing well." And I'm like, "No, my ankles are super swollen. Still, I'm very, very winded. I'm just not feeling okay."
right,
They sent me home. And I would say maybe a week and a half after that, I just feel like I have been hit by a Mack truck. I mean,
right.
horrible. I can't get out of bed. I can barely move. I'm sweating profusely. I go and see at this point, my speech is slurred. We don't
Right,
know what is happening.
right.
I go in to see my rheumatologist. He's basically like, something's off. It doesn't really seem lupus related, but it almost seems like you've had a stroke.
Mhm.
And he was like, but if something doesn't improve, you need to go to the emergency room like right away.
Right,
So that was a little bit more complicated for multiple reasons. But what happens is that night, and I'm like begging my husband because I have this newborn baby. She's exclusively breastfeeding. So I'm
right.
like, if I go into the hospital, who's going to take care of her? We still have these other 2
Oh,
kids.
yeah.
At the time, we have no support system.
Right,
I have no family here to help. It's just me and my husband. And so he's like, he calls the he calls 911. I'm not aware. The next thing I know, people are just coming in the house and
right,
they take me to the hospital. Long story short, I get there, and I even remember, like, the EMTs being like, "Okay, you just had a baby, like, this is normal, this is fine, like,
right,
you're okay, like, this is no big deal." And I remember one of the nurses saying, "Well, she did complain of chest pain, like, we really just don't need to send her home, let's just at
right,
least check her out."
right.
Come to find out I had a heart attack,
Wow.
and they had to do some additional tests. Within like 48 hours, they had diagnosed me with cardiomyopathy. My heart function went down to 5%.
Whoa.
And so I was no longer even able to pump enough blood to get to the rest of my body. So
Right,
my gut was failing, my digestive system, I had gained like a perforation in my small intestine, which is why I
wow.
was having all of the stomach pain. And just from there, it was like 5 different surgeries within a few days. I had multiple heart surgeries, abdominal surgery. I had a blood clot. I had to have an artery removed from my leg. They were thinking they were going to have to amputate my leg because that went cold. I was having no perfusion through my leg. Just so many unbelievable things. At this point, I have lost my speech. I can't swallow, so I had dysphagia. I was on a
Right,
feeding tube for 4 months. So no food, no water, anything by mouth for 4 months.
wow.
And, you know, so they have the diagnosis, and I remember them having the conversation of like, "Hey, we have done all that we can do." And I
Mm,
don't think it really clicked for me at the time, just like, "Oh, I'm gonna overcome this like I do everything else."
right,
But they actually had I do remember this, I was in and out of consciousness, I was on a ventilator, I was all of these things were happening, and I was progressively getting worse as I was in the
right,
hospital. But I do remember the one day, this one specific doctor I had was like, "Hey, I really need you to call your husband or have somebody here call your husband, and they need to bring your parents, they need to bring your children." And I'm thinking, "My children? My children haven't even been allowed in the CCU." I was in the
right,
CU, and she's like, "No, they need to come here today." And my dad, in a moment's notice, as soon as he found out I had a heart attack, him and my aunt Stephanie, they both came down right away to be
right,
here. So they were in town, and they literally called my in-laws, my kids, my sister was there with me. She came too.
right,
She was it, and anything you know about siblings, you don't always get along. We've
right.
always had that. But when she found out, she was there with me and she stood by my side in the hospital for 2
Mm.
weeks, 2 weeks straight. She took
Yeah,
care of me. She was there every day where they were rounding to find out what my treatment was gonna be for the day. So
right,
she was by my side, and I will forever be grateful to Aaron for that. Um, but they literally told them that I was not going to make it. There was nothing they
Wow.
could do. There was no treatment that they could do, and that they had done everything that they could, and that they needed to prepare to say goodbye to me.
Wow.
And my parents had the hardest time with that, right?
Right.
They actually let my newborn baby come to the CCU. So,
Wow.
and I don't remember any of this because at this point I'm not even conscious, but
Right.
they did all come in and do that. And so when I say a testimony, a miracle, there is no explanation. Like, there is
Right.
nothing about my condition that would have given anyone hope for me to survive. They called in
Mm.
everybody in the area that they knew that specialized in cardiomyopathy, especially postpartum
Right.
cardiomyopathy. So it was a very, very long recovery. I would say, over a year before I started to feel any sense of myself again. I was in speech therapy for months, again on a feeding tube for about 4 months. I was in the hospital in the ICU for 2 months.
Right.
So just a very and the interesting thing, Alicia, is that even though I have worked in hospitals and clinics and I work in, the healthcare field, I had never heard of cardiomyopathy and,
Right.
postpartum cardiomyopathy. I'd never heard of that.
Right.
And it's so interesting because one of the providers there was explaining to my family, this is actually very common in women of color, and
Wow.
it's progressively more common in the past 5 years. We don't know
Mm.
why. We
Right.
don't know why there's such a disparity, and we can figure that sometimes it's the lack of attention or the lack of listening, or when they are having symptoms, they get ignored, and so it's just a late diagnosis. But literally, if I had maybe waited 2 days to come into the hospital, my outcome probably wouldn't have been the same.
Right.
It was just them being able to identify that I had, 1, just had a baby, I had
Right.
had a heart attack, and now I'm in heart failure. So what does this indicate?
Right.
And so the interesting thing is with lupus and, the other neuro disorder and all the things that I've experienced, kidney failure, this was the thing that almost took my life, and it was a result of birth and
Wow.
recovery and, giving birth and all those things. And, my baby is healthy and she's wonderful and she was meant
Aw.
to be here and I love her. Like, I cannot imagine life without her. Um, but it is just a devastating thing that for, you know, now, like, 2 months of her life, my husband was fully taking care of her and
Right.
me. I could
Right.
not do anything for her because as a result of this,
Right.
so it is a conversation now that I feel like so many people need to be more aware of because,
Right.
again, one of those diagnoses where you really wouldn't know unless you end up at the right place and they really do the work to figure out what's going on with you. Um, but also just like the disparities that we see in maternal health with Black women all the time.
Yes.
You
Yes.
mean to tell me this is my third child and I never even knew that this was a risk because of, 1, my race, and then also because of my age. Never knew that
Right.
that was even a thing. Um, After that, when my husband had ended up posting a video, because people are kinda like, "Okay, wasn't she pregnant and didn't she have a baby? Like, where is she? Where's the baby?
Right.
What is going on?"
Right.
And so he kind of posted a video about my journey, and the amount of people that reached out to him, they were like, "Hey, I had this," or "My sister had this and passed
Wow.
away," or, "Oh, I had a relative that went to the ER with the same issue and did not ever go home." Um, there's so many stories now, and, like, this is the thing about social media, like, people are posting their stories and now you're learning about it, but there were just so many people that reached out that had had an experience with it that did not have a positive outcome, or they're still on medication, still receiving treatment, and so I am forever thankful, like, God has brought me through it, and
Yeah.
I know that that's a blessing because it did not
Right.
have to happen for me.
Right.
um, so now just wanting to for more people to be aware of that for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you so much. Like this, it's just mind blowing because
Yeah.
I just think about just your journey just with health in general. It's not been easy for you just
No.
your whole life,
Mhm. Mhm.
and you still show up with all this joy, and just being such a beautiful person.
Thank you. Thank you.
Seriously, because it
Thank
it could
you.
be the complete opposite.
Yeah.
And it could low key be justified in a way. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
do you know what she's been through? Like, okay,
Yeah.
if she wants to act out a bit, hello.
Yeah. She deserves it at this point. Yeah.
Right. But you've always been such a gentle spirit and just, just such a sweet, kind person. So, but like I said, even still, if that weren't the case, it would make sense. But
Yeah.
you have completely gone, the alternative route. It's like, no, I'm still choosing joy. I still know God has got a better plan for me.
Mhm.
And I love that. I
Thank
love that.
you. Thank
You
you, Alicia. I appreciate that so much. I think when it's something you've always experienced, like, you do sometimes you're like, "Hi, again? Like, I have to go through something again. Like, I'm over this," you know?
right.
But the interesting thing that I learned from this last experience and every other thing, right? Like with the NMO, with lupus, all of those things, I never doubted it. I always
Mm,
thought, I'm going to overcome this. I'm going to see the other side of it. I know God is going to bring me through. And again, coming back to that foundation of like family and what we've always been taught and our faith being
right.
so strong. But I will admit the cardiomyopathy was different. I did
Yeah.
not, it wasn't that I didn't think God could bring me through it. I just didn't think that that was the plan for me. And I
Mm,
got to a point where I had accepted that. And I was just like, you've given me this beautiful life. I feel horrible for my family and my kids, but like, I know if this is the plan you have, this is the plan you have. And that was
right.
a different type of acceptance and peace about something that I had ever had. But guess what? That wasn't his plan.
Right.
And I love the fact that you said that because sometimes I think for people, and I don't know if you've ever experienced this too, but like when you have a chronic illness, it's almost like a coping skill. Like resilience
Yeah.
is just a coping skill. Like you really can't put your mind to it too much. But it's like if I'm surviving all these things and I just want to be whoever God has created me to be,
Right.
whoever He wants me to show up as in my family, as a parent, as a spouse, in this world,
Right.
somebody who follows Him, who does He want me to be?
Right.
And yeah, so it's not me. I try to keep on and it's funny, like this was probably the one thing where I just was like so different and everybody was like, "You're just not acting the same." And I remember telling one of my providers, I'm like, "If I ever get to see my kids, like if I this was like maybe week 3 or 4 in the ICU, and I'm
Uh-huh.
like, if I ever get to see my kids, I'm never yelling at them again. I'm just gonna be
Oh.
patient." And she's like, "Oh no, you will definitely yell at them again. You're gonna go home, stop saying that, and you're gonna yell at them, and you're going to be frustrated with them." And just like and it's like you get to the point where you're like, "Okay, back to real life."
Right.
But yeah,
Right.
so yeah, but just staying centered in that joy is one of the things that brings you through
Right.
adversity a lot of times. So thank you. And same to you. You always have had such a beautiful spirit and I just have always looked up to you so much and
Aw.
always have a good laugh with you. So same to you.
Aw, thank you.
Yeah.
Before we go though, I wanted to just also just so people might be wondering, so it's like, how is life now, right? Like how are
Mhm.
things going for you? Are you back to work? Like what's going on?
Yeah. So I took 6 months off of work, just doing absolutely like seeing no clients, doing nothing with my business, which was very hard.
Right.
One, I have my own private practice, so I am a one woman show for most of the things. And I've been in private practice now for like 6 or 7 years, but with my own practice, it had only been 3 years before I got sick. And
Right.
so the weight sometimes of a mental health practitioner is like, I treat people with severe mental health illness. So
Right.
they need those check-ins. They need to be able to meet with me. And so I did my due diligence of partnering with another practice so that they had the support when I was out.
Right.
I still have not went back full time.
Yeah.
And that is something that I hope to do. But, our baby is still young. So I made up for a lot of lost time with her. And then just making sure, I think that when you have a long hospitalization and an illness that you're trying to manage, people don't always think about the impact that it even has on your family. And
Right.
so just trying to get my other 2 daughters like, "Hey, I know I was gone. I know that that was hard." Um, my I would say my middle daughter had the hardest time with it. She really
Yeah.
missed me and she struggled with it, but my oldest, it had been her and I for so long. She had never been without me. And
Right.
she is a little different in sharing her emotions, but I knew the toll on them. My husband
Right.
went from like being this like entrepreneur working all the time to really having to take off time to take care of me.
Right.
And my mom did eventually come and help and was here too. But it's just, even for my dad, he took off 52 days to be
Wow.
here. My Aunt Stephanie was here, for, like, 4 weeks total. She came,
Right.
left, then came back and helped my sister. So, she was here for an extended period of time, took off work to do that. So, it forever changed, like, relationships with my family members because they all
Right.
came by my side in a moment's
Right.
notice. But, like, I also know mentally for me, I am now like, "Hey, I'm not running myself into the ground. I'm
Yeah.
not gonna work all these hours and not be present for my family. If we wanna take a trip and we need to take a break, we're going to do it." And
Yes.
as you know, not always the best combination for an entrepreneur. Like, you can't just be like, "Oh, whatever, I'm gonna take off."
Right.
But just the value of, like, being able to take breaks and have
Yeah.
balance and practice self-care, things that a lot of times a 9 to 5 just will not give you,
Yeah.
and so it has changed my life in that way. I feel, like, so grateful to my clients that were just like, "Oh, you're back? Here we come."
Oh,
Like,
I
I've
love
had
that.
some really, really great clients that were very understanding about the time that I needed to take off. But yeah, just trying to take it at a slower pace, take things day by day, really cherish more moments and not dive into work so heavily, but then, still trying to be the best practice owner that I can be and really show up
Right.
for my clients too. So yeah, that's been life. It's not easy. I'm telling you now, it is not easy.
Right.
Uh, we both still my husband and I both still work from home because of
Right.
everything. But yeah, just trying to take it day by day. So, yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. This was wonderful.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh,
Thank you.
you are welcome. No, it's just so wild. Like I said, I think I said this prior, just seeing your journey and how things have like progressed. And it's just like, wow,
Yeah.
you are a miracle.
Thank you.
You
Thank
really are a miracle.
Yeah.
Seriously.
All God, for sure. All for sure.
But you have to give yourself some credit too, because like I said, there's some people who will just throw in the towel,
Yeah. Yeah.
you
That's
know?
true.
And so know that you have played a part in just knowing that there's more for you. Obviously, God is definitely in this, but
Yeah.
wow, just
Yeah.
amazing. Amazing. I'm serious.
But
This
like
is
you said, Alicia, we weren't built for that. We were not built for that, right? Like we were built to keep going and to be strong and have this sense of resilience. And so that is that. Yeah.
yeah, it's so true. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Thank you so much for this again. This was
Of
beautiful.
course.
Seriously. And if do you have like a website or anything for people to find you
I
or yeah.
do.
Yeah, if you could
So
get
my business is
get
called Inception Counseling. And then my website is inceptioncounseling.com.
okay, awesome. All
Yeah.
right. Thank you so much again. This was awesome.
All right.
Thank
Thank you.
thank you. And y'all, thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Eating Podcast. I'll see y'all next week.
All
This was
right.
amazing. Thank